Nicole, your friendly neighborhood librarian and amateur gardening guide. Welcome to the last part of our Growing Together program for this year. Today's topic will be seed saving, and we're going to teach you how to save seeds from what you grew this year to use again next year. We will of course be using materials provided to you in your to-go kit, as well as a few items from around your house. So, first let's go over our supplies. Inside your handy-dandy to-go kit, you will find some seed-saving envelopes, some coffee filters, 2 cheesecloth bags, and of course, as usual, we also have some resources for you, including a bookmark with some book recommendations, a little chart that tells you how long most seeds are good for, and then our information card, which of course has the QR code which takes you to this video, as well as the one that takes you to our program survey. Now, in addition to these, you're going to want some things from around the house, including some water to wash your seeds in, a knife and cutting board in order to cut open your veggies, a spoon or some other form of scoop in which you can use to scoop your seeds out, a pen or Sharpie to label your seed packets, and of course, something to harvest from. Now, you may also want to put down some newspaper or another table covering because this can get a little messy. And children, you will need adult supervision during the cutting of vegetables stage. And of course, adults are welcome to participate as well. Before we start actually saving seeds, we need to discuss some information. So, the idea behind seed saving is that you can save seeds from what you grew this year in order to plant again in following years. And this idea isn't new. This has been around for hundreds of years. But in modern times, it's a lot harder to save seeds simply because a lot of the plants we know today are either hybrid plants or have been genetically modified. Now, neither hybrid plants or genetically modified plants are a bad thing. In fact, most of the food plants and flowers that we know today are considered genetically modified because over the years of growing them, we have prioritized certain traits that like size or color or even flavor. And plants have also been developed in a way that they grow better in certain climates or they are resistant to certain pests and diseases. And all of these are good things, but it does make seed saving a little harder because of something called genetics. Now, I'm not going to go into genetics super deep, but the idea is that if you have 2 hybrid plants of the exact same type, if they cross-pollinate, you have every chance that those seeds are not going to be exactly the same plants when they grow. In fact, only 1 chance that they will come out exactly the same. So, you can certainly still save seeds from those plants, you just need to be prepared to get something a little different than what you were expecting. So what can we do? The simple answer is that we focus on saving seeds from plants that are called heirloom plants. An heirloom plant is a species of plant that has been carefully cultivated over generations so that it will continue to grow true to that parent plant for years. Luckily for us, it's very easy to tell the difference between an heirloom plant and either genetically modified or hybrid plants because they are carefully labeled on the seed packets you receive. So now that we know a bit about the plants we want to save from, we should talk about the process of actually saving seeds. There are 2 methods for saving seeds. One is called wet processing, the other is called dry processing. And the biggest difference between the 2 is where the seeds are on the plant. Wet processing, which we're going to start with, is most common for things like vegetables, where your seeds grow either on the outside or the inside of your fruit. And for consistency's sake, fruit is just the general term for a food product. So other examples of plants that you would harvest using wet processing are going to be things like tomatoes, peppers, berries, and most squash. Whether the seeds occur on the inside or the outside, we often need to wash the seeds in order to clean them off from all of the plant matter that is attached to them before we dry them. So, let's go over how we do that. First, we need to figure out where our seeds are. For today, I have an acorn squash. These guys are considered a winter squash, so when you're harvesting seeds from these, you harvest them just when they're ripe. With many seeds, you want to let them ripen even a little too much before you harvest them, so you know the seeds are fully developed. But winter squashes, once you take them off the vine, they are right where they need to be, and the idea is you store them over the winter and you just harvest seeds as you eat them. So our first step for this one is going to be to cut open the squash. Now these guys, they got a really thick skin, so we're gonna be extra careful while we cut it open. I've got some cut-proof gloves I'm gonna wear just to help keep myself safe. And then the other thing we need is a nice sharp knife of the correct size. So for this guy, first thing we want to do is find where it rests naturally. This is going to be the most stable position to cut it from. As you can see, I've got it resting on where the stem would be. Once I cut that off, it sits there pretty naturally. So now we get to try and cut it open. Now, you're going to want to go just off center. You see I'm right behind where the peak is. And then just wiggle it back and forth, right? Like that. And always keep your hands away from the blade of the knife and cut away from you. Do never cut towards you. Oof, this guy's thick at the base. And I'm kind of just rocking it back and forth instead of trying to saw or slice. There we go. And we're all nice and done. I'm gonna put this back to the side so it is away from where I'm working. And here we have our lovely squash with its lovely seeds. Since squash seeds are in the middle of the gourd, you want to make sure when you're cutting to keep in mind that some of your seeds may be cut in the process. If you notice any seeds are cut, go ahead and get rid of them because they're not going to grow. All right, so once I have cut open my squash, it's time to start scooping out the seeds. Now, to do that, you're going to want a spoon or another scoop, and we're going to scoop out everything from the inside of our squash. And I'm just going to be putting them straight into here because this is where I'm going to wash them. So, take your spoon and you're just going to scoop out all those lovely seeds. And so this stringy, slimy bit, this is what we call the guts. If you've ever carved a pumpkin, you've probably done a very similar process with those. And we just want to clean that all up, just like so. So the purpose of the guts on the inside of our squash is to protect the seeds as they develop and provide them with nutrients so that they can grow in such a way that they will produce a strong plant in the future. And we're going to do that to both sides. There we go. Got one runaway seed over here. All right, so nice and clean. Now I'm gonna set this to the side because later on I'm going to cook this for dinner. But right now what we are interested in are these seeds. So, as you can see, your seeds are still attached to a lot of the plant matter and they're kind of slimy. So what we want to do is take some water and we're just going to clean these seeds off. So, if you just kind of rub them between your fingers like this, you'll be able to remove them from the guts and get them to loosen up and also get them clean. This is a bit of a time-consuming step, so I'm going to go ahead and go through it, but we're probably going to fast forward the video a little bit here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to separate out my seeds into a fresh, clean container. There we go. And then I'm going to take them and I'm going to wash them under some running water. Just so, and make sure, you know, as you're taking the seeds out, you want to make sure that you're leaving behind as much of the plant matter as you can in your dirty water. Like, you want the seeds to be as clean as you can get them going into this next step. And we'll probably do another time skip here just because this can take a little while. So I've got a handful of seeds, so I'm gonna stop there real quick and go wash these. I'll be right back. All right, so now that I have washed my seeds and I have washed my hands, I am ready to move on to our next step, which is to dry our seeds. To do that, what you're gonna wanna do is grab your coffee filters. You're gonna lay one out flat, and I recommend labeling right when you start so you know what seeds are going to be on this filter. So I'm going to write acorn, squash, and I'm also going to write today's date so I know when I started them. All right, so now I'm going to take my seeds and I am going to lay them out, they're still a bit slippery, onto my coffee filter. And what you want to do is make sure you're doing them all in one layer and you're leaving space in between the seeds so that air can flow around them. This will make them dry faster and will prevent any mildew or mold from growing while they're drying. There we go. Just like that. Sorry, this takes a little while. Couple more. One hold out. There we go. Okay. All right. There we go. So as you can see, I've got them all laid out just very loosely on my coffee filter. There we go. Now we can see them a bit better. They're not touching. And now I'm going to put this somewhere cool and not getting too much sunlight so these seeds can dry. Good places to put that would be somewhere like a pantry or a linen closet because they're enclosed spaces that don't get a whole lot of traffic and they're away from the sun. But you can use wherever works for you in your own house. You want to leave these to dry for at least 1 week. If when you go to check them, they still feel at all damp, leave them for longer. You never want to package seeds that are not completely dry. So, I'm gonna set this off to the side and I'll find somewhere nice and dry to put it. So, what do you do once your seeds are ready? Then you can package them, which is what we have our little seed envelopes for. And when you are making your label, you want to make sure that you are writing down the name of the type of seed you've got. So I've got acorn squash. You want to write the date they were collected. And then any growing notes. So like these ones, for example, if I had a specific type of acorn squash I was growing. These ones are just the classic normal acorn squash, but if I had a specific variety, I might write that down here. If they have any specific growing requirements, like these ones, they need a good bit of space to grow. I would write that down. And once you've done that, you just seal up your envelope and you're ready to move on. So that's it for wet processing. Now we're going to move on to dry processing. So for dry processing, a lot of it is exactly the same. But there is usually no water involved. And now dry processing is most common for plants who carry their seeds either on a stem or in some form of a pod on the plant that dry, and they naturally start to dry as the plant develops. So for our example today, I am going to be using some poppy seeds that one of my lovely co-workers brought for me. Now, poppies are a flower that form these pods to hold their seeds. And this one pod probably holds anywhere from 100 to 200 seeds in it. And you know, when poppy seeds are ready to be harvested, we want to wait for the pod to dry, so it's this nice brown color. And then if you give the pod a gentle shake, you can hear the seeds rattle around inside. So, our first step for this is going to be something called threshing. Basically, the idea is we are going to crush this pod in order to give the seeds a way to escape. And if you're doing a larger plant and not just one pod like I am today, you can use a pillowcase, but today I'm going to be using one of our cheesecloth bags. Now we chose these bags because they have a really, really fine weave on them. So they are nice and airy, and it's really easy to make sure that the seeds aren't escaping. So I put the pod inside my bag, and then I'm going to use my own weight in order to crack this open. Oh, and I just started. So just lay it on the table and give it a good squish. Depending on how hard the pod is or how the seeds are carried, you might need to use more force or less force. This one didn't take too much, but sometimes you need to stomp on them. And that will entirely depend on the type of plant you are harvesting from. So, now that I have crushed my pod quite thoroughly, I am going to pour out the contents of my bag onto one of my coffee filters. Look at all those seeds. That's a lot of seeds. And try and get as much of it out of the bag as you can. Some of it will probably stick, but there we go. All right, so now as you can see, I've got both seeds and plant matter inside of my coffee filter. So our next step is called winnowing. And it is the process by which we remove all of the extra plant matter so we just have seeds. Because I am working with such a small portion here, I'm just going to winnow by hand. I'm just going to pick through and pull out the pieces that we don't want. If you were doing a larger batch of seeds, you could use something like a basket or a sieve like you use in the kitchen in order to separate out those seeds from the plant matter. And we want to make sure that we are not leaving any plant matter behind. Oftentimes, if you leave things like dried leaves or pieces of the stem in with seeds when you package them, they can sometimes rot and go bad because the plant matter provides something for the mold to latch onto. Now, this pot has actually been drying for several months, so I'm very lucky that I am very sure that my seeds are dry. All right, we're probably gonna do a quick time skip here again. Okay, so now I've got my seed clean, and I'm very lucky in that this particular pod I know is completely dry because it has been drying for several months. But if you feel like your seed is at all wet, again, you want to sit it out to dry for at least a week, possibly longer. And you want to, once again, label your coffee filter. But because I know this one is completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and go straight to our seed envelope. So, I'm just going to, these seeds are very tiny, so I'm just going to pour them in just like this. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and close my envelope, and I'm going to label it just like we did with the other ones. So these are poppies. They were collected today. Now for notes, I'm going to say that these were harvested last year because that's when I was given the pod. That may take time off of how long it lasts. There we go. So, once your seeds are in your envelopes, of course, you want to make sure that you seal them closed, and then you're going to store them somewhere cool and dry. A sealed jar or similar container inside your refrigerator is a great place. Just make sure that that container stays absolutely dry. A good way to do that is to add in a silica packet, which you can often find in bottles of new vitamins. They often come in shoe boxes when you buy a new pair of shoes, but just put 1 or 2 of those into your container with your seeds, and it'll help keep them dry. I do not recommend freezing your seeds. The reason for this is that if there is any moisture at all in those seeds when they go into the freezer, that moisture is going to expand like water does when it turns to ice, and it is going to ruin your seeds. Freezing can extend the life of seeds if you do it correctly. So if you want to go that way, I do recommend doing a lot more research than what I'm giving you here, and just maybe have a backup plan in case it goes wrong. Speaking of the life of your seeds, however, as I mentioned before, one of the things in your packet was this handy dandy little chart that tells you how long certain types of seeds for different plants will last in storage. For example, our squash seeds, they're going to last let's see here. Let me find the squash. Squash and pumpkin. They have a long life expectancy. Now this means that they can be stored and replanted for 5 years or longer, which is one of the longer time frames. That said, the longer a seed is in storage, the less likely it is to grow well once it is planted. So that's just something to keep in mind as you go through your planting over the years. And that is all I have for now. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been quite the year, and I'm glad we were able to help guide you guys through this season of growing. If you'd like to learn more about gardening, you can always search our digital resources on Libby or in our catalog. And of course, you can come see us in person to browse our wide selection of books. If you can, please fill out the participation survey by scanning the black QR code on the back of your information card, and let us know what you liked about this program and what you'd like to learn about in the future. As always, I would love to thank our partners from the Municipality of Anchorage's Solid Waste Services, Anchor Gardens, the Anchorage Museum, the University of Alaska Fairbanks Cooperative Extension, and of course, the Alaska Botanical Garden. You guys have been so much help and you've put so much into developing this program with us. So we hope you all have a great summer. We hope we see you again, and of course, happy reading.